Well, welcome everyone to this Circle of Entrepreneurs Do Well, Do Good talks, second in the series with a team from SAP, which is really exciting. My name's Chris Baker. I'm the Managing Director of the Circle of Entrepreneurs. For those of you who don't know who we are and what we do, the Circle believes strongly that business can be both a profitable and a force for good. We empower people to drive social impact through and within the world of business by nurturing a community of purpose-driven entrepreneurs and allies. We are a global non-profit movement that provides the space, support, and connections for these individuals and teams to flourish and deliver impact at scale. Now, joining me today is a real insider from the world of entrepreneurship. As the Venture Scouting Lead for SAPiO's Intrapreneurship program, she has a handle on all of the amazing individuals who come through the system, helping identify what makes a great entrepreneur. Here she is to tell us her perspective, give us her insights on how to be a great advocate for social change in your organization. So I'm pleased to welcome, to joining me today, Lisa Labath. Lisa, welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi, Chris. I'm actually pretty great. And first of all, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about talking to you today and talking to your audience today. So thanks for having me on your show.
Not at all. And look, I was really keen to hear about what you had going on today, because it sounds like you're very busy at the moment.
Yeah, I am. Not just today, but we're actually currently running our 3-week Accelerator program. That's basically our flagship program. So for me and for the team I'm working on, it's kind of the most important time of the year, where we have 25 teams from all over the world come to our internal accelerator that we're running, where they're working full-time on their venture idea. And they're basically put on like this tremendous growth trajectory, preparing them for investment. And at the end of the program, we organize a pitch with a jury of SAP executives. And after that, the decision has been taken, or at least it will take a few weeks from then. But then based on those pitches, we take the decision on which ventures will actually get funding and can start their ventures. So that's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting indeed. I like the way you referred to them as a jury. It's like a verdict.
Yeah, maybe I should say investment committee. That's probably the better term.
That's the softer language. Brilliant. Yeah. Great. Well, look, Lisa, I mean, maybe to get us started, perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit more about your role specifically and sort of how you got involved in the Intrapreneurship program.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. And maybe before I start with what my role is, I'm not sure if everyone listening knows what SAPiO Entrepreneurship does, which is the team that I'm working on. And so we are actually the program inside of SAP that empowers small and entrepreneurial teams to turn their ideas into actual profitable businesses. So it's what we do is corporate venturing, where we combine the best of both worlds, if you would, the combination of an entrepreneurial approach with the unique strengths of being inside of one of the market leaders in enterprise software applications. So what we do is enable employees to become entrepreneurs, and we offer them a proven method to learn entrepreneurship, to rapidly grow their idea. We connect them to lots of mentors from inside and outside of SAP. And so over the past 6 years, or 7, I think by now, we've invested in I think about 20 ideas, allowing these teams to work on their ideas full time for 12 to 18 months. So it's kind of seed stage investment, and we mimic a venture capital approach to venture building, if you will. And so what my role is basically I come completely at the beginning of this process. So what the first step is in building a next big venture at SAP, or building the future at SAP, which is what we like to think that what we're doing, is to do scouting. So what I do as a scout is I look for the entrepreneurial talent at SAP. Also, I look for innovative ideas that have the potential to become the next big thing. And so by scouting for that exceptional talent, but also collecting massive market opportunities and doing matchmaking between the two, we can work on an environment or a company where we make sure that not a single idea is lost, not a single entrepreneur is lost, and that way we can really achieve a huge impact for SAPiO and ultimately for SAP. So that's basically the long story. I always feel like if I have to explain my job, it takes me a few minutes, but I think you got the gist of it.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think it's great to hear that in some detail. I always think like, how could I describe my job to my grandma if I had to? And then you're like, oh no, what's the short version? But no, it's
actually, I saw like a fun, just a side note, but I saw like a fun, I think the comms team at SAP once like asked some of the colleagues at SAP to ask their like 10-year-old kids to try to explain what their job was, and then they made like a few quotes on that, and it was just like the funniest thing ever. What type of answers came out of that? So that's an interesting exercise for people with kids, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you work in the world of business, I think that would probably benefit all of us. Yeah. Fantastic. I'd really like to know sort of what excites you personally about entrepreneurship, and what sort of motivated you to get involved in that sort of side of things, and what your take really is on the impact that the program has personally.
Mm-hmm. What excites me the most, and like I know how cliche this probably sounds, but I really just love the people that I get to work with every day. Because honestly, every single day I get the opportunity to work with people, both in the team that I'm working with, but also the entrepreneurs that we're working with, who want to change something that's broken. And so they're really the type of people that want to, or that don't accept the status quo, right? Like they want to do something different because they know they believe they can fix something. And so people that really like take that initiative, that want to try different things out, that want to learn new skills, that's exactly the kind of thing that excites me as a person as well. Like it's also the kind of thing that I think made me move abroad, or like move away from home and try out different things. And it's exactly like that mindset of being curious and creative, and driven, like to like I said, not just accept the status quo. I think that's awesome, and that's like really what makes my job super interesting. And I mean, apart from the people, also like every day I hear new like ideas of what the future could look like when it comes to software, then in our case specifically. And that's just super enriching. Like I learn a lot about like different industries and different processes every day, and see what we could work towards. And even if those ideas don't get realized, like it's just really interesting to learn about the way people look at ideas and the way they look at potential solutions as well.
Yeah. So, that's really interesting. And you talked about kind of reimagining the world in the future, and obviously a lot of the big issues that the world faces at the moment are socially motivated or impactful, right? Whether it's the environment or whether it's tackling some other crisis or other opportunity that's out there. When you work with entrepreneurs and potentially some that are more socially motivated, like how much do you see that coming across in terms of the social motivation and the wanting to do something good for the world? How much do you think that comes across in their drive or in their motivations? And do you sort of see that when you're out and about finding people who would kind of fit the program?
Absolutely. And it's often more than just a starting point, right? Like for a lot of people, it's really at the core of the entire idea, and also part of the ideas that we, or part of the program that we specifically run. We also run or help organize the 1 Billion Lives initiative at SAP, which is specifically targeted at these type of social ideas that we call them. But also in our more B2B traditional software solutions that we're trying to build, we see that sustainability component comes back more and more. And obviously it's something that it's not just a CSR tiny thing in every company anymore. Like I believe like sustainability has become almost at the core of what every software company or companies in general are doing, right? Like it really has gotten to the forefront where it exactly should be. So it's really exciting to see that a lot of the ideas that come in and that are submitted are focused on that, you know, and like there's a huge range of what sustainability can be and what type of ideas that it can bring in, you know, like there's this whole range of well, I could sum up, I'm just like thinking of all the ideas that were submitted this year, for example. There's this whole range of topics and type of ideas that are submitted each year. And that's super exciting to see, honestly. I mean, and especially in what we do, obviously, like at the end of the day, we want to create profitable businesses, right? Like that's the core of what we do. But that doesn't mean that they can also not have like a social or sustainability impact, right? So, and that's exactly what we're looking for as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. It's the do well, do good mantra, right? And that's great to see that it's becoming more common. Not to put you on the spot, but you mentioned that there were a lot of great kind of submissions this year. I mean, do you have any favorite examples of some ideas that maybe people were coming up with at a high level?
One of the things that traditionally generates a lot of ideas, and it's a topic that's also close to my heart, is food waste, for example. Like you see a lot of ideas coming in each year that think of ways to, for example, help retailers in the industry figure out how to reduce not only food waste, but also packaging, for example, right? And then I remember like one of the ideas that came in it's building a solution around the problem space that retailers don't always necessarily know what type of plastics, for example, come in through their suppliers. Like, because that's a lot of time, like you see this on the internet all the time, right? Like people get frustrated that they see like a banana wrapped in plastic in a supermarket. That just doesn't make any sense. And from an outsider perspective, it seems to be something that is like super easily fixable, right? And we had a team come in this year that like really looks at this problem from a data perspective, and how can you make a better connection between the vendors, like I said, the vendors that sell their food products to the retailers, and how it can be better tracked and therefore also improved how much plastic comes in, where does it come in, and where is it potentially unnecessary. And so that's something that is really interesting for me to see, that it's not just that outsider perspective where you just like think, okay, this is super frustrating, why is it so hard to fix? And that you can then hear from teams who really like delve deep into this space and actually figure out a way to potentially solve this, right? So yeah, I'd say food waste is definitely one of them, but there's obviously a lot of teams who think about carbon offsetting, for example, water waste, whole bunch of topics that all touch on sustainability in a different way.
Amazing. No, I mean, it's super cool, and it's kind of taking that social angle, so the social problem, taking, you know, in this case SAP's technological kind of scale or starting point, and then using that to create new
exactly,
right? Fantastic. And I'm sure, you know, there's you know, a lot more examples from loads of different social problems that are coming through, and I think it's amazing to hear that there's, you know, they're commonplace, right? And that's kind of what the program is themed around, and you know, social entrepreneurs not being the exception anymore, you know, being more of the kind of more common example that everybody has.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, let's take the conversation a little bit more in towards an individual characteristic of entrepreneurs, right? And what you look for in your job when you're out there scouting for talent, and the right characteristics to come through the program. What sort of skills, you know, if you could pick top 3 skills, and it's a bit of a cliche, right? But when you're out there and you're thinking, okay, this person would be a great fit, this person's showing the right potential, what sort of things do you look for in an entrepreneur?
Great question, and exactly right up my alley, obviously. And so it's, first of all, it's interesting that you mentioned like skills in particularly, because one of the things that we as a team and me and my role have thought about a lot is like, how can we, SAP has 100,000 employees, like what are the type of employees that we need to target? Can we like, is there a higher probability of people being entrepreneurial if they have a certain background, if they've been in a certain role, if they have had a certain career before? Like, can we use hard data to figure out like what the more probable or successful route towards entrepreneurship is? And the answer is that it's very hard to define that from a background perspective or from like a type of career perspective. It's not just as easy as saying someone who has been a product manager for 5 years in this area is more likely to get investment at SAP, or someone who is like an industry expert who has worked in the retail industry for 20 years, knows it inside and out, that's going to be a perfect entrepreneur. It's not as simple as that. And the reality is, and that's exactly what it also makes it difficult, is a lot of it comes down to personality. It doesn't necessarily matter as much where you come from, of what you've done before, even though obviously it helps to have a certain background or like knowledge in a certain space for you to know that space very well or that industry. But it really comes down to personality oftentimes. And then I would say, I'll take the liberty to give you 5 instead of 3, if that's fine. So the 5 characteristics that I think are probably the most essential one is, first of all, resilience, or perseverance, however you want to call it, right? Like being able to be flexible in the face of challenges and adversity, because at the end of the day, you are trying to build a startup or a venture inside a corporate. There's challenges there. Like it's not easy. It's way more easy to just remain in your day job, do your normal hours and go home. So you really need to be resilient to recover quickly from difficult situations. The second one I'd say is courage. You need to be willing to take risks, because again, here it's much easier to accept the status quo and do nothing different. And so it really requires a type of courage to just get out there and try something new. A third one, I would say passion, for sure. Like you need to be able to believe in your idea, and then you really see that. Like some of the people, some teams, like I don't know, just the passion just bursts out of them, and it makes you as an audience automatically more enthusiastic. Then I'd say the last 2 are like adaptability and creativity. Adaptability is not just for entrepreneurs. I think in our society, it has just become so important. Like the world evolves so quickly, and if you're not able to adjust to new conditions, you're just gonna not be in the game. So you might like leave the office on Friday and come in on Monday and finding yourself, dealing with a new competitor in your space, or like maybe there's a supply chain issue or whatever. Like maybe some of your co-founders have left. So you need to be able to like adapt and recover from that. Because otherwise you're going to get like emotionally drained super fast. And then the 5th one is, like I said, creativity, the ability to look at problems from a different angle, because obviously we're not alone in this world. And some of the issues that maybe you're trying to tackle are issues that other people know about as well. And so what do you do differently? What do you know more than somebody else? Or not only what do you know, like what else do you know and what more do you know, but like how can you think about it differently? And I think these 5 is a bit of a long answer, but these 5 characteristics are definitely like essential to me.
Yeah, amazing. And I think it's really, as you said, it's not skills or particular experience or particular technical ability. It's a mindset, right? Or it's a set of traits and characteristics that all come together to and you mentioned passion, right? Having passion for the subject, and I guess that's some part of that social piece as well of what really matters to you. That kind of has to be fundamental, and then that plugs into a lot of the other elements to say you're not going to be successful if you don't really care. Right?
Exactly. And you can tell, so easily. It's really like when you talk to someone, like even in virtual settings, like it's probably even more obvious, like the way that someone is talking about their idea, it's like, oh man, I'm already getting excited by hearing. And sometimes these topics are like, I don't know, it could be pretty dry, right? Like could be a logistics problem or whatever. But if you just, they really find a way of like being passionate about it. It's not finding a way you are or you're not, I guess. But yeah, then you can make everything sound super interesting.
For sure. I mean, I would also say though that, those are 5 quite punchy characteristics, right? You've got resilience, you've got risk taking, you've got, ability to kind of adapt and deal with ambiguity. And that can sometimes lead, I suppose, to people thinking, oh, it's a bit of a closed group. I don't necessarily feel I'm confident in all of those things. So therefore, it's not for me. Do you find that is the case, or do you find that the entrepreneurs you work with, they come in different shapes and sizes? Maybe they're really strong on some of those characteristics, but not on others. Maybe they work in a team with somebody who has some of those. Do you find that happens a lot, or is everyone you work with kind of a strong proponent of all 5 of those characteristics that you mentioned?
They definitely come in different shapes and sizes, for sure. I mean, and what you mentioned, I think is a big part of it. Like you are usually in a team, right? Mm-hmm. In the beginning, we really urge people to not have too large teams, because being like multiple people at a very, very early stage can just add a lot of unnecessary complexity and communication as well. And so we feel like the strongest teams are usually pretty small in the beginning. However, that doesn't mean that in teams you can see quite a bit differences. I mean, sometimes like there's a team of 3 and there's one person who is the obvious like CEO type of character, right? Like they're the one who like pitching, they're the one who like to be on stage, and then maybe you have someone who's rather prefers to be in the background and is like maybe the technology genius, or like can actually build this thing, and maybe is not as excited to like sell it, but that doesn't mean that they don't have like the grit or the passion or the creativity, like I was talking about, to make sure that this thing actually works. Because you need to be able to figure out super quickly, what is it that the customer wants, what problem are you solving, and how does my solution solve that problem? And for that, obviously you need different skills. So yeah, I wouldn't say that everybody needs to be like jumping on the table and being like the loud person in the group, but yeah, you have different characteristics in the founding team, and that can perfectly work.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, right? Because it's not about going alone all the time. It's what's the phrase? You can get, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? To use another cliche, exactly. but that's kind of part of it, right? And and kind of being able to team up with the right people and kind of co-found. I think that's a really important point that people sometimes forget, particularly when it's they're working as an intrapreneur, because it's not as obvious. You're always you're not out there as an entrepreneur being like, I need to find my co-founder and then I need to go and raise money for something. It's
you're tackling different challenges in corporate entrepreneurship, obviously. And one of the things you just mentioned is a pretty interesting one, like attracting co-founders, for example. What we sometimes see is that people come to us with an idea and then they go, hey, can you help me find a co-founder? And we always say the same thing. No, we cannot. I mean, yeah, we can. What we do is like facilitate. We want to enable people to create a great environment for them to thrive in, but they need to be the ones who come up with the idea, who attract co-founders, right? Like it's a great sign if someone who comes up with an idea by himself can actually, with his enthusiasm, passion, whatever you want to call it, attract people to want to join him, right? Mm-hmm. What we cannot do, I mean, we could perfectly well, like help our top founders or whatever, like attract the right people and like help to recruit. But at the end of the day, that's not gonna make them more successful, right? Like these are all things that they need to figure out. And what we always say is like, we're looking for people who know like how to hustle, like who know inside of SAP how they can kind of like find their way through the process, and should probably not say this out loud, sometimes like circumvent this, but you know, like to get to where they want to, and to not be delayed by corporate processes, right? And if we see that happen, it's magical. It's awesome to see.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I want to finish with one final question, Lisa, and that is, what one piece of advice would you give a budding entrepreneur now, somebody who's starting that journey, who has probably a passionate topic that they want to go, maybe even a solution, but you know, they're at the start of that kind of journey. What piece of advice would you give them?
I have one piece of advice, and that is to just go out and try things out, however small, because you can read all the books and you can go to all the events and listen to all the talks like this one. And at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to make a difference if you just start like building that muscle of figuring things out. Your first attempt doesn't even have to, I mean, even if it fails, and that's what we tell our entrepreneurs all the time, like even if you fail, you're going to learn so much from just like trying things out and going through the process. And so that would definitely be my piece of advice. Like, don't just sit on an idea and try to make it perfect before you show it to anyone. Like, talk about it. Find people to work on it with you. Just go out there and see, you know, where it takes you. Instead of reading another 5 books about entrepreneurship, that would be, I mean, reading books is good. Don't get me wrong, but you know, just go out and try things out.
I'll remember that when you write a book, Lisa. That'll be the...
Yeah, I was just gonna say I should be more careful about what I say. No, but you get the idea.
Yeah, I do. No, and it's a wonderful thing to finish on. You know, 2 things. You know, don't be afraid of failure, and go out and try something, because otherwise, you know, it'll never happen. And particularly, you know, if people are passionate about whether it's a social cause or another cause, but you know, you're out there thinking, how do we make the world a better place? How do we solve these issues? You've got to go out there and do something, and try something out. And I think that's a really great point to finish on. Lisa, it's been fantastic to speak to you today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for your perspective. You know, on behalf of the Circle and all of our listeners, you know, it's been great to hear what it's like, you know, on the inside of a program, but also what, you know, what kind of makes an entrepreneur. And I think that's great to hear. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I had a great time, and also for your audience or people listening, or from Circle of Entrepreneurs, like if anyone wants to reach out or has more questions or wants to talk, always available on LinkedIn or wherever. So just reach out. Happy to speak. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. And for everybody else, thank you for listening. Really appreciate your joining us today. Just to carry on from what Lisa just said, and this was a perfect segue of going out there and trying something and flex the muscles. Please keep your eye out. On Wednesday, the 10th of November, we're launching a series of Do Well, Do Good hacks. These will be practical sessions, a chance to come together, work together in some teams and really practice some of those innovation skills, those teaming skills, and those entrepreneurial skills to tackle a social problem. It'll be a really exciting session. So do keep your eye posted for sign-ups, and we hope to see you on the 10th. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time. Thanks again to Lisa, and we wish you the best. Bye.